Mm-hmm. But you have to answer some questions first. Yep. See what you remember from the other day. Okay, it's 1:30. How's everybody doing today? Good. Been getting some sunshine, hopefully. Last couple days, yesterday, today, tomorrow is supposed to be beautiful. So try to get outside as much as you can. It's good for the vitamin D, right? 20 minutes a day, vitamin D. That's all you need out in the sunshine to get the amount that you need. We're going to start today by trying to answer these questions. So I want you to try to answer them on a piece of paper or whatever without looking at notes. Okay, so see what you can recall. Name 3 ways one might be able to tell there has been improvement in their aerobic conditioning. What are the fit prescriptions for children through adolescence? So you need to break that up into the specific categories. And then what are some of the vitamins or minerals that you as adults and children appear to be lacking in? There was a lot of crossover there. So you can list some of those, hopefully like 3 to 4 of those. Okay. Okay, guys. Okay, yes, I can do that, I suppose. There we go. A little better? Okay. You can't read 12-point font from there?
Okay.
Number 2, there was a fit recommendation for various ages, and it was broken into groups.
ages children?
So I'm trying to get you to break it down into the different groups.
Oh, like toddlers and adults.
Yep. So try to get it as specific as you can. I was hoping for 3 or 4. Everyone's all done. Okay, so what I would like you to do is, with a couple people around you, I want you to go through what the answers are. Okay, so if you guys came up with the same answers. Need to get you guys rolling.
One What age? You were the one 30 years ago. They were like, Yeah, I think there's that. Yeah, but like. Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. And then I had these 3 spots. Yeah. Organized. That's what I got. 6 to like. Yeah, it's a 6 minutes of road. And then there's like a muscle like. Yeah, I think. Yeah. There's like 2 to 3 people. Yeah. Yeah. And you got what, so 1 to 2. You got them type like that. Well, I know you, but you got stuff out. I know you guys.
Okay, when you're finished talking about this, I would like your group to come up with at least 3 ways that a person might know they have improved their resistance conditioning. Okay? They've improved their resistance conditioning. What are 3 ways? How do you know you're improving your resistance? You are. Okay, if you're a group that's done talking about these things and you're waiting on other groups, I want you to tell your group what the highlight of your day has been. What has the highlight of your day been? Listening to that song. I'm pushing one. Yeah,
Presentation.
Cameron, did you say you slept till 10?
Yeah.
Oh my God. What time did you go to bed?
I went to bed at 9. I was just super.
Oh my gosh. You slept until 10? Holy moly. That's, yeah, that's a little bit of sleep. Oh gosh. That's great. I had been up for 5 hours since from the when you got up. I got so much done in that 5 hours. Yep. I'm on like my third breakfast at 10 o'clock. Okay, guys. Let's see. Name 3 ways one might be able to tell there has been improvement in their aerobic conditioning. Let's see. Gabby, can your group share what you came up with? Okay. Nice. Okay, who wants to add 2? We can work out for longer. Yasmin?
So, wait, was this for the?
The first one.
Okay, yeah, so it was lower heart rate and resting.
Yep. Yep. And also the recovery, right? The heart rate's going to come, it's going to drop quicker as soon as you stop exercising. You can go longer, but you can also increase your intensity. Okay. So increase duration, but also intensity during that time period as well. Okay. What are the fit prescriptions for children through adolescence? And I heard a lot of different conversation about this one. So let's see. Antonia, can your group kind of, can you name one? And what? Yep. Awesome. Yep. Good. Good. Okay. Laurel, your group. What's next? Toddlers. Good.
There we go. And it's like 1 hour.
Uh-huh. Okay, at least 30 minutes is structured and 60 minutes of unstructured. So toddlers in this scenario is going to be considered like 1 to 3. 1 to 3, yeah. Okay, Jake.
Is the next age group like 3 to 6?
3 to 5.
Oh, 3 to 5.
Yep.
And it was 60 minutes of structured and unstructured.
Very good. And that group is going to be referred to as preschool. Good. Good. Okay, Tyson, what about your group?
Ours would be the next one.
Yep.
Okay, so adolescents, right? Or children.
Good.
It's pretty much the same thing, 60, 60. Yeah.
Okay, so aerobic, we're shooting for at least 60 minutes a day. And part of that 60 minutes is what they're saying, at least 3 days a week, part of that 60 minutes should be strength training of some sort. Okay. Nope, part of the 60 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, Connor, your group, number 3. What are some of the vitamins or minerals that adults and children appear to be lacking in?
Iron,
Good.
vitamin D,
Yep.
potassium,
Okay. Good. Vitamin. There's another
Calcium.
calcium and vitamin D, very good, and vitamin C as well. Vitamin C as well. Okay, good. Nice job, guys. All right, did you guys get to talk at all about how a person might know he or she has improved their resistance conditioning? Any thoughts on that?
They increase the resistance.
Okay, so they increase the amount that they can lift. Okay, what else? Good. Yeah, and so they've improved, or their rate of perceived exertion has gone down for the same type of activity. Good. What becomes easier along with that? Very good. Our ADLs are going to seem a lot easier. Okay, so if you can lift more, then perhaps you can also do what? You can lift more weight, but also what does that correspond to as far as sets and reps, right? So probably increase sets and reps as well. Good. Okay. No. Let's see. Here's specific. Okay, you are able to lift the same weight 12 times instead of doing it 8 before fatiguing. You are able to increase the weight lifted or the resistance you overcome. You're able to complete more body weight exercises. You increase the number of sets completed, targeting a particular muscle group. Okay, if you're doing these things, if these things are happening, then your rate of perceived exertion is going down. Climbing a flight of stairs is going to feel easier. Okay, unless you're really sore and tired. That's just always going to feel. Not really. Oh, you guys get all scared away from each other. There you go. Robbie's still working hard. All right, so this is adults. So now we're talking like 60, sorry, this is elderly, right? Older adults, 65 and older is what we're going into. So we know that chronic diseases, the risk of those chronic diseases is going to go down the more active they are leading up to that time period. That's why even after, when you're done being an athlete at LC or you're done being in college and you are parents and you're living the life, that's why it's still really important to find time to exercise, because your life when you're older is really going to be determined about how active you are right now. Can you reduce the risk by addressing biological risk factors? Okay, so they're looking at biomarkers within the blood. Biomarkers, hypertension, right? Obesity, high cholesterol. If we can reduce those things, your risk of those chronic diseases, more severe diseases such as cancer, is going to be decreased. For older adults, when we're looking at nutrition, some of the major components, and you're not going to see a lot of difference here, guys. Okay, it's going to be pretty much the same from infancy or from 1 year old up to the time you're on your deathbed. Okay, increase consumptions of your fruits and your veggies, right? As much as we can. That's where we get our fruit. That's where we get our fiber. We don't get those added sugars when we're eating those things. We're getting those raw sugars, whole grains, fat-free dairy. And again, a lot of this has to do with if somebody has high cholesterol. Oftentimes these days, that's what we see in older adults, having higher cholesterol. If they have high cholesterol, they might be at risk for atherosclerosis or those arteries being narrowed. So we want to go with a lot of food products that don't have a lot of cholesterol, because we don't want that to keep building. We want to try to keep those arteries as clear as possible. Include healthy forms of protein like lean meats. Salmon is great, but it's spendy. It's more expensive. Poultry, fish, nuts. Limit the consumption of your saturated fats, your sodium, okay? Cholesterol, added sugars, etc. Same stuff here. And then balance those calories from foods and beverages with calories burned. We're still looking for those older adults to be active, to burn more calories, and balance that out. Now, you don't need, as you get older, you don't need as many calories, because the thought is that you won't be as active. But if you have an older adult who is still out running 5 miles a day, they're going to need calories.
Consume nutrients in sufficient quantities as fewer calories are consumed to maintain. So this is where the quality of what they're ingesting becomes really important. Okay. I can think of a lot of older individuals that have lived by themselves. What do you think happens to how they eat and what they eat?
You do whatever they want.
I do whatever they want. Okay, my husband's grandma, who lived by herself for years and years, until she was 92, she lived by herself. But my aunt finally had to tell the Schwanzman to stay away. You know who the Schwanzman is? Okay, well, I talked about this at one other time in class, I think last semester, and I had a kid say, "Who's the Schwanzman?" And I was like, "Who's the Schwanzman?" Okay, ice cream, you know, they've got a lot of different things, but the Schwanzman had her number, man, and he would come every week or every other week, and she would buy a couple of gallons of ice cream. And I'll tell you, that ice cream was gone within a week and a half. She's by herself. She was going to eat what she wanted, and she had dementia, so she usually probably forgot that she just ate ice cream, so she would eat it again. So if somebody's living on their own, especially, they get to that point where there's no reason to really cook. Maybe they haven't been to the store, so there's nothing to really cook. They're living off of canned things, boxed things, frozen things, whatever it is. Cereal, oatmeal. If you're looking for like a really good gift for like your grandparents, for instance, I'm guessing some of you have grandparents that are alive, and maybe you've noticed that your grandma doesn't like to cook as much anymore, but your grandpa still likes to eat. A good gift that you could do for them is you could make them a bunch of meals, okay? Bunch of prepared meals, stick them in their freezer. Then all they have to do is put them in the oven, cook them for about 20, 30 minutes, 350, and they have a meal ready for them, home cooked meal, not store-bought. So something to think about. I noticed my grandparents really, really love that, really appreciate it. My grandma, she's just tired. She doesn't feel like cooking anymore. Like I said, my grandpa still wants to eat. Calcium and vitamin D, we're looking at 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams for these older adults for calcium. Okay, vitamin D, 800 to 1,000. Your upper tolerable intake. Now, vitamin D, we know that that's going to help absorb the calcium. We have to have it, which is why we talked about it. A lot of products now being fortified with the vitamin D to help that calcium absorption. But remember that if they're not getting outside, they're not getting that exposure to the sun to help with the creation of that vitamin D as another source rather than just what they're getting from food products, then might not be as efficient, okay? Really hard during the winter time. Very hard during the winter, not only for us, there's times where we don't want to go outside, you know, it's 15 degrees out, you might not feel like running outside, but it's even harder for them. So it's important to get them as much sun exposure as possible. As you age, the ability to digest and absorb vitamin B12 starts to typically go down. So this is where an older adult might really need to look at having a supplement. I think all older adults should be on supplements. Vitamin B12, you know, if they're lacking that energy, B12 also needs to be present because it helps take the food, the energy that you have from the calories you ingested from those macronutrients, and it converts those calories into the energy that you need. So an older adult, and B12 has something to do, plays a role in dementia as well. So if older adults are really lacking B12, it can not only affect their brain, but it can affect the amount of energy that they have. Consume proper amounts of fiber. As you age, risk of colon cancer goes up pretty significantly, especially for males. And males over the age of 65, usually there's a pretty high number that deal with colon cancer. So fiber is very important. Supplementing, I just talked about it. Should you, shouldn't you? At this age, like I said, I do think it's really important. Maybe that's just because I've had firsthand experience with older adults, seeing how supplements can help them. I think we need to be cognizant of the type of supplement, making sure that it's a well-rounded supplement, a sound supplement, and not just one where, you know, only 10% of it is really truly going to be absorbed. And I think, again, even more so important if you have an older adult who's living by themselves, not wanting to cook. If you have an older adult who is living in an assisted living center and they are making food for them, the food is probably fairly well-rounded, and they're also probably adding some things to it to get them the vitamins and minerals they need. So probably not as important, but in the case where somebody's by themselves, supplements are very important. Okay, so we know physical activity in general has major physiological effects, but also has a lot of psychological benefits as individuals age. I think maybe I mentioned, I don't know how many of you spend time like on the levee, but in Lewiston, you usually see quite a few older people walking on the levee. There's people who move to Lewiston just to retire because really the weather isn't that terrible in the winter. You know, it's a pretty dry winter typically. And so since it's a big retirement town, there's usually a lot of older individuals walking on the levee, talking with their friends, maybe it's a spouse or whatever, but that psychological and then the social component is very, very important. The less interaction they have, the more their brain, the more cognitive impairment they're going to start to have. Think of it like this, the brain is like a muscle. Don't use it, it starts to atrophy. So older individuals, if they're sitting in front of the TV all day or just sitting around not doing much all day, that brain will start to atrophy and they'll be at risk for cognitive impairment as they get older. So it's estimated that now that we're talking about cognitive impairment, it's estimated that about a third of adults over the age of 65 die with Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia. This is pretty scary. The risk doubles every 5 years after the age of 65. Doubles every 5 years. So that's why, again, even if the person's at home, there's a lot of things they can be doing. Reading stimulates the brain, okay? Like Sudoku, puzzles, crossword puzzles, anything like that where you have to think, critically think about something is going to keep that brain working. But if that's not happening, the risk is going to be pretty scary. There's factors that are associated with exercises itself, such as increased blood to the brain. That increased blood flow to the brain is going to help decrease somebody could start to have the appearance of these toxic proteins in their brain, and those toxic proteins are linked to Alzheimer's and dementia. And we'll talk more about those specifically when we get to the Alzheimer's chapter, but just as kind of a brief introduction, we know that there's a link with toxic proteins in the brain and Alzheimer's disease. And then, again, because there's that improved blood flow, we're going to see increased cognitive performance rather than that decrease. Blood flow means oxygen, right? Means nutrients, getting it to that muscle. That's how it's going to continue to function well. Some of the key risk factors that are related to specifically heart disease, we see can be improved with exercise. And when we have older adults, most older adults are going to be engaged in endurance type activities. If that's resistance training, they're going to be lifting, lighter weights, but more reps, more sets. If it's aerobic conditioning, not so much anaerobic conditioning. So reduction in the bad cholesterol, those are those LDLs. Okay, low density lipoproteins. I can't remember if we talked about this, have we? Does anybody remember?
I don't know.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, LDLs. And these are the bad guys, okay? Low density lipoproteins, those are the bad cholesterol that like to build up in the arteries. It's that buildup that's going to disrupt blood flow, increase blood pressure. On the other hand, we have high density proteins. And these are the HDLs. Okay. I don't know why this might work for you, but happy. Okay. H equals happy. High density, so these are the good guys. There are specific numbers that you want to be under for these. Again, we'll kind of get more into detail on these in other chapters, but some of the things that we do cause a double negative, meaning it causes your low density lipoproteins to go up, and it causes your high density lipoproteins to go down, so such as trans fat, okay? Trans fat causes a double negative. We want these guys to be high. We want them to be as good as they can be, really, because they're going to help combat what these low density lipoproteins are trying to do in the body, trying to do in the arteries. They will actually go to the arteries, they'll grab those LDLs, and they will transport them back to the liver, where they can actually then be utilized for energy. They might be transitioned out, but they are not being stored in the arteries. So the high density lipoproteins are very important. If you have very low HDLs, very high LDLs, that's usually individuals that have atherosclerosis, okay, or that narrowing of those arteries build up. So there's definitely reduction. We definitely see improvement in these numbers when older individuals are exercising, being physically active. And then we also see improved sensitivity to insulin. We talked about an insulin resistance, right? An insulin resistance is when the body has a hard time for insulin attaching to the glucose and getting that glucose to the receptor sites. So if we have improved sensitivity to that insulin, the glucose is going to attach. We're going to get that glucose to where it needs to be, the receptor sites, so that it's not free flowing in your blood. And that's how you get your blood glucose to come back down. Okay. Other things as far as neuromotor flexibility, aerobic strength training, we see improved bone health. I know you guys know osteoporosis. The risk becomes very high as you age. Arthritis as well. So bone health, very important, increased muscle mass. We see ease of ADLs. And then again, I told you with older adults, there's sometimes a big fear of falling. And because there's that big fear of falling, they won't do certain things, they won't go certain places. So they're limited on their physical activity. So if we can do neuromotor training with them, try to increase that balance, and at the same time we're increasing their strength so that if a fall does happen, they're more likely going to be able to catch themselves or at least get themselves back up from that fall. Okay, sometimes they're worried about a fall because they've had one and they couldn't get up and they didn't have a phone or anything with them to help. So they had to lay there for a long time before somebody found them. So there's good reason behind it, but that also tells us there's good reason to be doing neuromotor and strength training. Okay, so here's the specific fit for aerobic muscular flexibility and neuromuscular. There's tiny bit of change, not much, okay? You'll see aerobic is the same. We're shooting for most days of the week, but really it's gonna be moderate intensity. You're not gonna have very many older adults who are gonna be doing vigorous exercise, right? Most of them are gonna be moderate intensity, so we're talking they're working at 50 to 60% of their max. We're shooting for 5 to 6 days, so most days of the week. And that's where we get that 150 minutes. That's the same guidelines as prescribed for just adults, 18 to 64. Muscular fitness. We do have a little bit of a change here. Okay, for older adults, we're looking at 10 to 15 reps. So again, now we're more definitely into that endurance side of things rather than on the strength hypertrophy end that we were seeing with those adults. And 8 to 10 exercises. So usually it's really good if they can be, honestly, group training for older individuals is awesome. This is your exercise. This is what you're going to do. This is the circuit, okay? Someone's going to be there to help you, spot you, if there's any issues. So a variety of exercises because really we want a whole body exercise. Flexibility, static stretching primarily, and that'll be 30 to 60 seconds for each stretch. And then the neuromotor training, it says 10 to 30 seconds, and that's because, actually, I think it's supposed to say 10 to 30 minutes total, 10 to 30 seconds for exercise. So per exercise, if it's balance work, right? Balancing on one foot, we're trying to get them to balance for at least 30 seconds. They can do it longer, great. But ideally 2 to 3 days a week. And again, that can be embedded up here. There can be a lot of overlaps, a lot of crossover there between the strength, the muscular fitness, and the neuromotor prescription. Okay, guys, I wanted to finish today with a TED Talk. And I just,
I was curious when you said 10 to 30 seconds, how many minutes would that actually take?
So ideally, we're looking at like 30 minutes.
Like
Yep.
30, 45
Yep, just like the adults. Yeah. Let me see if I can get this to work. I feel like this may not have worked for me the other day for some reason. Escape that real quick.
So when you get up in the morning, you probably feel pretty free to choose what you're going to do. My guess is the first thing you do is reach for one of these. My cell phone.
is that true?
It gives me continuous access to an online all-you-can-eat buffet. I can enter a virtual gambling casino, get hooked on a little app or a game. Hey, shop till I drop. I got to be honest with you. I cannot not look at this thing when it pings with a new text message.
True.
And I am one of the 78% of Americans who can't get up out of bed in the morning without checking this thing first. Sometimes I don't even notice I'm reaching for it. I just do it. Now, here's a product you probably don't have in your pocket. This is powdered alcohol. I'm not kidding. Palcohol. It's going to be out on the market this year. So I could just carry around this convenient little package and mix myself up a cocktail whenever, wherever I want. Maybe I should add it to my morning coffee at work. It might jazz things up a bit. So here's my point. At no time in human history has our species been so bombarded by stuff designed to get us hooked. Companies compete on the very basis of creating ever more habit-forming products. And it's no different with our food. Food corporations hire scientists to engineer the most irresistible habit-forming foods. Sugar is currently their go-to ingredient. These guys have flipped the script on us. They are using the very brain imaging technologies that we use to try to find cures for addiction. Only they put people in the MRI machine and feed them Dorito chips to figure out ways to tweak the recipe to make it even more habit-forming than it already is.
Would you want to have that job? Be the one eating
So here's
Doritos.
my question to you. When you live in a world that is surrounding you on a 24/7 basis with food products scientifically engineered to be habit-forming, do you really have freedom of choice? Now, most addictive substances are actually quite safe in their natural form. Heroin comes from poppy seeds, cocaine from the coca plant, alcohol from fruits and grains. For centuries, farmers high up in the Andes Mountains have chewed coca leaves. It's a tradition. It's a mild stimulant, like drinking a cup of coffee. It helps them work longer hours and cope with the high altitudes. Probably the worst thing that could happen to you after a lifetime of chewing coca leaves is maybe you'll get bad teeth. Things do get really bad when we industrialize the coca production process. When we learned how to refine the coca plant down into its most concentrated form, a little rock of white powder. That's when the humble coca leaf becomes the lethally addictive drug we know as crack. Now, what's interesting is that up until the 20th century, cocaine was actually an innocent, domesticated white powder, just like sugar is today. People put it in everything. You could go to your drugstore and buy it in a soothing tonic. People put it in cough syrup and gave it to their kids. Coca-Cola is one of the most successful products in modern history. It was formulated in the 1880s, and the company's founders were so proud of their special recipe that they vowed never to change it. But at one time in history, the Coca-Cola Corporation was forced to change its recipe. And that was in 1903, when the political current, the tide was shifting away from cocaine, eventually to make it an illegal drug. That's when Coca-Cola took the cocaine out of the Coke. Of course, they just replaced it with a different addictive substance, namely caffeine. So here you have it. A concentrated dose of sugar combined with a concentrated dose of caffeine. Double the pleasure, double the chances we'll get hooked. The fact is, as long as food corporations aren't breaking narcotics laws, they can do pretty much whatever they want to formulate their products to make them even more habit-forming. My work takes me into San Francisco's Tenderloin district. Every big city has a place like this, right? It's a few square blocks of extreme poverty and urban blight. There's a liquor store on every corner, usually with a bunch of drug dealers hanging out in front. We have a name for places like this. We call them alcohol and drug saturated environments. Now, the Tenderloin has a program called Safe Passage. Volunteers go to the school bus and pick up children to safely walk them to their homes. They have to travel circuitous routes through the city streets to avoid all the drug dealers and liquor stores. It's like living in an obstacle course. When it comes to food, to processed food and sugar, we're all living in an obstacle course. Our own Tenderloin, It's on every corner, in every store, in every workplace. 74% of the foods in your grocery store have sugar added to them, stuff that doesn't even taste sweet. So why do I care about this so much? It's actually not the rising rates of obesity worldwide that keeps me up at night. It's two other very disturbing trends. And the first is the appearance of adult diseases in children. Type 2 diabetes is linked to heavy sugar consumption, and especially sugary drinks. It's called adult onset diabetes because in my parents' generation, we only saw it in adults. Today, 1 out of 4 American teenagers is pre-diabetic or diabetic. Next is the appearance of whole new diseases that seem to come out of nowhere. The diagnosis non-alcoholic fatty liver disease didn't even exist until 1980. Again, a condition linked to heavy sugar consumption and poor diet. By 2020, in 5 years, it's going to be the leading cause of liver transplantation. This is the global warming of human health. These trends are warning signs like melting icebergs and rising sea levels. They're telling us that there's something very wrong with our food environment. Our food supply is making some of us very sick. Here's the good news. There is some good news. The solutions to this situation are easily within our reach. Now, everybody always says, educate the public in healthy choices, but we know that doesn't work. If it worked, then why would 48% of Americans still be drinking a sugary drink or more a day? The fact is, I could say until I'm blue in the face, don't drink that stuff, it's unhealthy. You already know that. But when you live in a sugar-saturated environment, more often than not, you'll probably just reach for what's been put in front of you. And if it's a concentrated source of pleasure, a product carefully engineered with white powders to get you hooked, that puts a huge burden on you all the time to say no. And many of us don't. So what do we do about this problem? How do we fix it? The solutions are actually remarkably simple, and here's how it works. Food companies have gotten very good at seducing us towards their products in ways that we barely even notice. All of the most effective public health strategies just do the opposite. They gently nudge us away from the unhealthy stuff. It's simple. We just flip the script back. So, for example, soda companies, they intentionally keep their prices down so that we'll buy more. If we put a tax on the soda, that raises the price a little and gently nudges us away. If food corporations are barraging our children with advertisements for Captain Crunch and Cocoa Puffs, we can just take those ads off the air. If they pay grocery stores to put candy at eye level for our little children, we can put it a little higher on the shelf. And if they pay famous sports figures to promote Gatorade, we can pay them to say, I drink water. Small changes can add up to big shifts in the environment. We know this from decades of research on addictive substances. I understand we really would all like to believe that we're in charge, that we have complete freedom over what we eat. But how free can we be living in a saturated environment, one that continuously surrounds us with food products carefully engineered to get us hooked and keep us coming back for more? Those kids in the Tenderloin, they apparently live in what's called a food desert. They don't even have access to a grocery store. Really? What's a grocery store when it's stuffed with junk food? 74% of it loaded with added sugar. All the health experts will tell you, shop around the perimeter of the grocery store. That way you can steer your way around all the junk that's in the middle. But how different is that from a strategy that steers children around drug dealers in the Tenderloin? We can do so much better than this. We don't have to live in an environment that is rigged to get us fat and then blames us for the health consequences and the medical bills. We don't have to sit by and watch our children suffer from diseases of adulthood. We can re-rig this environment to make it safe. It's not about personal choice anymore. It's about our public choice. Thank you.
Okay, guys, so I think you could probably pick up that all of that kind of points back to money, right? It's all about money. Selling stuff, it's profitable, so that's why it happens. Anyway, I think that's an interesting TED Talk, but that's all we have for today. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. Tuesday, what are we doing?
Games.
Games. Don't get mad at the game show host. Don't forget your quiz, okay?